And I'm back already so soon. So I have some outtakes from the PID tuning video that I just posted, and I'm going to bundle them here into a separate video. I wanted to keep that one short, only seemed kind. And this one is showing you how to take a terminal program. I'll use Pronterface as an example, but any terminal program will do as long as it connects to your printer. And you can send a Marlin M303 code to perform PID on the printer bed, as well as the nozzle. Bed is not available to you for PID through the user interface in the community firmware, but it is available through the terminal. Here we go. Now, if you already have a terminal program that you use to send G-codes to the printer, don't feel like you have to follow these instructions and put a different one in place. I'm going to take you through the installation of Pronterface for a simple reason that I'm now running Clipper on my Raspberry Pi. I've taken Octoprint off, so I can't simply go into Octoprint and show you how I would have used it. But Pronterface came out of the RepRap program. If you don't know what that is either, it might be fun for you to wiki that and have a read, but it's a tool that will allow me to control my printer, to send codes to the printer. It's incorporated into suites of products by a group who are generating and maintaining this. Their product suite is now called Print Run. So if you go to pronterface.com, you're suddenly presented with a bunch of banners that say Print Run, and I thought, rather than confuse you with that, the recommendation I'll make is if you go into Google and you just type Pronterface, you see the top two links that I have here. All3dp.com is a fun online magazine in the 3D printing community, and they have a series of articles every month. You might enjoy subscribing to that. This particular article takes you through the weeds of how to download, install, and set up Pronterface itself. So I won't repeat the internet. I'll simply advise that this is the place to go. Okay, start here. Read up, get past the ads, get past the banners that say come join us. Okay, and read up on where it came from, why would I want to use it anyway, where would I get it from. Skip things that say download. At this point it's just an ad, right? We're looking at the article. It tells you that little circled link there. It's going to tell you go there to get the latest release when you get to the page that I'm going to take you to. So, and all the instructions are in here. You can install this software on any of the operating systems you might be running. And if you really love it, who knows, maybe you've found something you're really excited by now. Let's go back to Google now. I'll branch into Pronterface.com homepage. The Print Run as a suite, which includes Pronterface. Go to the download link here. Don't scroll down. It just gets a rabbit hole of confusion. Take latest release, click there. Now it brings you into GitHub, where they maintain the source code. Just like the community firmware, down at the bottom of their release page will be assets. Looking for the one that works on your system. I happen to be running Windows 10 on a 64-bit machine, so that's the one for me. Once it's downloaded, you can click the arrow to the right of it and say Show in Folder. That'll take you to Explorer and highlight the file that we're looking for. Right-click on there and say Extract All. If you want to keep this application somewhere, choose a place to put it. I'm just going to leave it in Downloads, but it is just an executable file. It's not a Windows installation per se, so you'll want to put the executable somewhere where you can run it again and again if you plan to use it more than once. So I'll just drag the executable out onto the desktop for the ease of demonstration here. So the first time we launch Pronterface, the interface isn't necessarily laid out in an optimal fashion. There's a there's a decent sized control space. There is this big pad over here. And the terminal window is way over there on the right hand side. Tall, skinny column. With a command line, I have barely room to type anything. So what I'm going to do here is go to Settings, Options, User Interface. I'm going to change the mode from Standard to Compact. I'm also going to be using PID, so I want to see temperature in action. So let me select these two ways of displaying temperature. You decide which one you prefer in your application. By doing so, I have moved that terminal window from the right hand side to down here. I've made it wider. There's room to work now. The terminal program is going to need to talk to our printer over a serial interface. So that means a USB cable between the computer and the printer motherboard. Find out which port it's communicating on. You want to right click on the Start button, select Device Manager, look under Comms, right, Ports, COM and LPT, USB Serial Device COM3. Now I happen to know that's what it is because if I unplug my printer, the Device Manager refreshes, there are no ports allocated, it's disappeared completely. Alright, and when you plug it back in, there's COM3. The COM3 is what we're going to use when we go to Pronterface. Start with printer settings, change none to the COM port that we saw in Device Manager, in my case, COM3. Now, if I knew what to type, that's where I would type it. I would send commands to the printer by typing in my G-code here and hitting the return key on my keyboard. So now I need to know what to type. If I go back to my browser and I open a new search window and I type in, let's say, Marlin, which could just as easily be about fishing at this stage, G-code. Now we're getting closer. I happen to know it's M303, so I can go straight there. If you didn't know that, you would have to browse to figure it out. So, PID Auto Tune, Marlin firmware M303. And this is what I meant by scrolling around. You could search, let's say you didn't know that it was 303. So you might have come to this page and now be searching for PID. And everywhere that PID is mentioned is returned by the search engine, including PID Auto Tune. Now the other two there, set hot end PID, set bed PID, that's if you know what the values are already, just type them in. We don't know what they are because we have to run the PID first. That's the whole point here. So I'm back to where I came in. PID Auto Tune M303. Command initiates the process of heating and cooling to determine the proper PID. Requires PID temp or PID temp bed. That is a reference to what's in the configuration files. I can assure you that the CR6 community firmware is programmed to enable those two values. View current PID with M503. So there's something easy to do. If we go back to Pronterface, we type M503 in that command line and click to send. Printer is not online. Well, that's an interesting statement. So when you're doing a video, best thing to do is to focus. We'll start by pushing connect. You notice the controller's changed to a darker color now. That's confirming, along with the disconnect button here, that's confirming that the state of this application now is connected to printer. You can also see in the window here, printer was not online. Now it says connecting after the 503. Right? Printer is now online. Let's try that M503 again. 503. Click to send. Wow, look at all that. A little hard to do. We'll have to scroll. From the time we sent the M303 command, which basically says tell me everything in the settings. Right, we sent M503. There's the confirmation from the terminal that it obeyed our command. And this is what we got back. So, PID settings. M301, which you saw was the code for setting the nozzle PID. There are the nozzle PID settings from the configuration file that was compiled into your firmware, my firmware. This is the bed, M304, set the bed PID temperature. So those are the values that are in there now. The G29 is dumping the bed mesh as it is right now, auto bed leveling. M420S1 says it is activated. G29 with these coordinates, this is telling you for each of those points what is the current offset in the mesh. Okay. So 503 is a useful command, but a bit verbose for my needs in this demonstration. So let's go back now to M303, which is the code we're researching. This is typical of the Marlin documentation page. It'll tell you exactly what the syntax is, as long as you can understand the punctuation. So M303 you would type, that's your command, then you need to leave a space the way they did. And then each of these tags that come next is explained here, sometimes with an example, depends on the specific document. Helps if you do them in the same order as displayed. Not always necessary to put them in the same order as displayed, but you need to include the switches that matter. So when I did the nozzle PID, I said, 3 wasn't quite as good as 5. Notice they've basically said the same thing. So if I don't specify cycles at all, they're telling me they're going to use 5 cycles. That's what default 5 is telling me. I could just say C3 and they would do 3 cycles instead. Or I could say C5 or C7 or C9 or whatever number I want, and they will do as many as I ask. D, the action, says, what do I do now? Do I toggle the PID debug output on or off? Because when I'm debugging, I want the terminal to tell me a lot more about what's going on. In this case, I don't want to use D at all. So these 2 Ds here I can ignore. E for the index, I have to tell it what I'm trying to PID. So it's -1 if I'm doing it for the bed. It's 0 for the nozzle. They're not clear there. The default of 0 means they will PID the nozzle if you don't say -1, E-1 in fact, to make them PID the bed. Okay, so we need so far M303, E-1, C5. Target temperature you're going to have to specify or it doesn't know what to do, so we pick a number. I was talking PLA in the demo, so let's say 55 is a good number. U flag is very important. If you don't set U, it'll tell you it's done the PID, but it won't use the values. If you include U as a flag, then it will actually put the PID results into the EEPROM for you and use them from now on. Okay, so let's go in and do that. M303 E-1, so M303 03, just in case, take that cursor away. M303 C5 S55 E-1 U. Hit return or click on send here so you can see me do it. There's what we typed in. That's exactly what it sent to the printer. And the feedback is that we have now started the PID auto tune. So you just be sure that you've got nothing standing on the bed that's going to be upset if you warm it up. See the bed here. It's going up slowly. You notice that the target value didn't change. That's one of the perturbing things I find with Marlin's design there. Although the target was specified as 55, in this case, it leaves the target parameter at 0. It doesn't use that value in the firmware, but it doesn't use that variable. But the temperature is going up, which is your only feedback that it's actually implementing the heat, aside from, yes, I started. Or PID debug might have given us a bit more information. On the graph, the red line is the bed temperature. The blue line is the nozzle temperature. The nozzle temperature will not change here. Right? You see 31 here because I have a PT1000 thermistor in my machine, and it doesn't read room temperature the same as the NTC100 did. But for whatever reason, I can't just look at it's not running the nozzle heat, it's just that the thermistor happens to read a little high at room temperature. Your bed there is searching for 55, so because proportional integral derivative controllers tend to need to adapt, they're a closed loop control system that needs to adapt to what's going on. It will overshoot at first if the parameters allow it to do so. And then it'll realize it's overshot and correct back down again. So on the graph, you would see temperature going up and down a little bit if it was a better resolution in the vertical axis here. So it's not a fast thing. I can speed this up for you. So it started to give feedback in the terminal. The advice now is to go back to your configuration.h file where those default PID parameters were that we showed with M303 and replace them with the new values. Replace them with the new values recommended there as a result of the PID we just ran. Right? Define default that, default that, and default that. Which you could do if you compile your own. Go ahead and do that. Then you won't have to repeat this next time you flash the firmware with the corrected configuration file. If you frequently change the bed surface, I do that. I have a flexible bed. I have a wham bam plate. I never bother with the glass, but if I did, the thermal inertia of the bed would be different in each case, and you might benefit from running PID according to the bed type that you have installed. If you make major changes to your bed, if you were to change the aluminum plate, for instance, or if you take out the spacers and put in the silicons, maybe you could run the bed PID again one time. But you don't have to do this on a regular basis per filament, unless you find that you're not getting the adhesion you're looking for with the more exotic materials like PETG and ABS and nylon and so on. If you're printing with beds at 50 for PLA and 100 for ABS, then you may want to redo the PID when it's time to do some printing at the other temperature. But if you're always doing everything at PLA, do this one time just to be sure that your particular machines and bed surface have been incorporated into the behavior control, and then you're good. You could do the same thing as we just did for the nozzle. If you are here anyway and you just want to try it out, in this case, you don't have to type the E-1 because it won't be the bed. You just leave out the E parameter altogether, or say E0. And that's how that works. Hope that was short enough for those of you who like to buzz through the videos. I'm sure you found what you're looking for the guys who enjoy the soundtrack and the final sign-off. Here it comes. Bye-bye.